My wife's family turned against me and treated me like I didn't belong. I was cut out of family gatherings and silenced at every table. When they tried to take what I built, they thought I had no power left. They were very wrong. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. The wedding reception had been smaller than Avery wanted. Her mother made sure everyone knew it. Lynette Brooks stood near the modest cake table at the community center in Fort Collins, her smile tight as piano wire, greeting guests with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for funerals of distant relatives. "It's intimate," she told anyone who asked, her voice honeyed with disappointment. "Very practical." He stood across the room, watching Avery laugh with her college friends, the white dress catching afternoon light through tall windows. For years they'd been together. For years of dinners, road trips, quiet mornings, and the slow building of something he thought was solid. She looked happy. That was enough. Or so he told himself. Kellen Brooks approached with 2 glasses of champagne, his gray suit crisp, his expression neutral. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that filled rooms before he spoke. He handed over 1 glass without ceremony. "To new beginnings," Kellen said. They drank. The champagne was cheap, slightly warm. Kellen's eyes moved across the small gathering, calculating something unsaid. "You two planning to stay local?" Kellen asked. "We found a place outside town. Quiet neighborhood. Good for starting out." "Starting out." Kellen repeated the words like he was tasting them. "You own the business outright, correct? The supply company?" "I do." "Smart. Ownership is everything." Kellen's gaze sharpened. "You'll need to think about growth soon. Expansion. Can't stay small forever." "I'm comfortable where it is." "Comfortable." Another word rolled over Kellen's tongue, found lacking. "Well, comfort has its place." The conversation ended there, but the assessment didn't. He felt it in the way Kellen's attention lingered, the way information was being filed away. This wasn't a father welcoming a son-in-law. This was an investor evaluating an asset. The newlyweds moved into a modest 2-bedroom house on Maple Ridge Drive 3 weeks later. The neighborhood was exactly what he wanted: tree-lined streets that turned gold in autumn, chain grocery stores within walking distance, neighbors who waved but didn't pry. The house had good bones, a small yard, and enough distance from the Brooks family home to feel like their own space. That distance lasted exactly 2 months. Avery's family began appearing without warning. Lynette would arrive mid-morning with casseroles nobody asked for, staying until early evening, rearranging their kitchen cabinets while offering commentary on their choices. "You keep the spices above the stove?" she asked one Tuesday, her tone suggesting he'd committed a minor felony. "The heat ruins them. Everyone knows that." He moved the spices. It was easier than arguing. Calvin, Avery's younger brother, showed up most Saturdays with beer and opinions. He was 26. Worked in his father's real estate office, and had the casual cruelty of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "So you're in construction supplies," Calvin said one afternoon, sprawled on their couch. "That's like nails and lumber and shit." "Materials, mostly. Commercial contracts." "Riveting." Calvin grinned. "You ever think about doing something bigger? My dad could probably get you into real estate. Actual money there." "I like what I do." Sure. Calvin cracked open another beer. "Just saying, you're married into the family now. Might as well benefit from the connections." Avery laughed from the kitchen, that light, easy laugh that used to make everything okay. Now, it just sounded like agreement. The first family dinner at the Brooks house happened on a Sunday in October. The home was large, meticulously decorated in shades of cream and gray, everything positioned with the precision of a stage photograph. Lynette had prepared roasted chicken, vegetables, potatoes with rosemary. The dining room table could seat 10, but felt crowded with 5. Kellen sat at the head, naturally. Lynette to his right, Avery beside her mother. Calvin across from Avery, and him, at the far end, physically present but somehow excluded by simple geometry. The conversation moved like a river that knew its course. Kellen's business developments, Calvin's recent sales, Avery's part-time work at a design firm. They spoke in references he didn't understand, inside jokes that predated him, family shorthand that required no translation because he wasn't meant to follow. "Remember when we went to Vail that winter?" Lynette said, smiling at Avery. "You were so stubborn about skiing the Black Diamond." "I was 12. Avery protested, but she was grinning. "Your father had to come down after you," Lynette continued. "You were stuck halfway, crying and refusing to move." "I wasn't crying." "You absolutely were," Calvin added. "We have pictures." They laughed. He ate his chicken. It was tender, well-seasoned. He tried to contribute once. "Avery mentioned she wants to go skiing this season," he said. "We were thinking of—" "We should do another family trip," Kellen interrupted, not looking at him. Calvin's been asking about Breckenridge, and the conversation shifted, flowed onward, leaving his words orphaned in the air. This became the pattern. He would speak, and the family would simply redirect. Not rudely, not obviously, just with the practiced ease of people who had long ago decided what mattered and what didn't. After dinner, while Lynette served coffee, Kellen gestured for him to follow into the study. The room smelled of leather and old wood, lined with books that looked more decorative than read. Kellen closed the door with a soft click. "How's business?" Kellen asked, settling into a chair behind a heavy desk. "Steady. We landed a contract with a development firm last month. Good margins." "Margins?" Kellen nodded. "You keep your books clean, I hope. Nothing worse than a messy operation. Everything's organized." "Good, good." Kellen opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. "I've been thinking about your situation. Young couple, starting out, financial pressures. You're what, 31? 32. Right. And you've got this little business. Stable, you said. But stable isn't the same as secure." Kellen leaned forward. "I've got contacts. People who invest in small operations, help them grow. You interested in that kind of partnership?" Partnership. The word hung between them, loaded with implications. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully, "but I prefer keeping things independent." Independent. Kellen's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A recalculation. That's an interesting choice. Most people want help when it's offered, especially family. I just work better on my own terms. Your own terms. Kellen closed the folder, slid it back into the drawer. "Well, the offer stands. Think about it. For Avery's sake, if nothing else." The drive home was quiet. Avery stared out the window at the dark streets, her reflection ghosted in the glass. "You okay?" he asked. "You barely talked tonight." "I tried. Nobody seemed interested." "That's not true. You don't really engage with them." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Your father offered to invest in my business." "He did." Avery turned, suddenly animated. "That's amazing. What did you say?" "I said no." The animation died. "Why?" "Because I don't want partners. And I definitely don't want to mix family and business. They're trying to help you. They're trying to get involved." "That's different." Avery looked back out the window. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable anymore. It was the first crack in the foundation, hairline thin, easy to ignore. But cracks don't stay small. Winter came early that year, snow arriving in November and refusing to leave. The business slowed, as it always did in cold months. He spent more time at home, more time around Avery, more time noticing the small changes in her behavior. She talked to her mother daily. Long calls behind closed doors, her voice muffled but animated. When she emerged, she'd look at him differently, evaluating, questioning, as if seeing him through someone else's eyes. Mom was asking about our finances, Avery said one evening while they ate dinner at their small kitchen table. "Why?" "She's just curious. She wants to make sure we're doing okay." "We're doing okay." "She thinks we should be saving more. Building something." "We are building something." Avery set down her fork. "She also said you keep everything really separate. Your accounts, your business stuff." She said that's unusual. There it was. The beginning of interrogation, disguised as concern. "It's not unusual. It's smart. It seems like you don't trust me." "I trust you fine. I just believe in keeping clean records." "Why? Do you think we're going to split up?" The question landed heavier than she probably intended. He looked at her across the table, this woman he'd married 6 months ago, and saw Lynette's influence in the tilt of her head, the skepticism in her eyes. "No," he said quietly. But I watched my parents tear each other apart over mixed finances when I was a kid. I swore I'd never let that happen to me. We're not your parents. I know. That's why I keep things clear. But Avery didn't look convinced. She looked like someone starting to doubt what she thought she knew. The holidays brought a new level of family involvement. Thanksgiving at the Brooks house was an elaborate affair. Extended family, old friends, enough food to feed twice the guests. He helped where he could, mostly staying in the background, learning that invisibility was easier than constant correction. Lynette pulled Avery aside 3 times during the evening. He watched from across the room as mother and daughter spoke in hushed, urgent tones. Each time, Avery glanced his direction, her expression troubled. Later, in the car, he asked about it. "What did your mom keep talking to you about?" Avery hesitated. "She's worried about us." "Why?" "She thinks you're planning something." "Planning what?" "An exit. She thinks you're protecting yourself because you don't see this lasting." He pulled the car to the side of the road, put it in park, turned to face her fully. The streetlight overhead cast shadows across her face. "Do you believe that?" he asked. "I don't know what to believe. You won't share anything with me. You won't let my family help. You keep everything locked up tight. I keep things organized. That's not the same as hiding." "It feels the same," Avery said, her voice breaking slightly. "It feels like you're already halfway out the door." "I'm right here. I've been right here. Physically, sure. But emotionally, sometimes I feel like I'm married to a stranger." The words cut deeper than she knew. Not because they were true, but because they were someone else's words coming from her mouth. He heard Lynette in every syllable, Kellen in every doubt. "I am protecting myself," he admitted. "But not from you. From situations I can't control. From chaos. That's different than planning to leave." "Is it?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the real truth was more complicated than either of them wanted to face. Yes, he was protecting himself. But he was protecting himself precisely because he'd seen how quickly love could turn into leverage, how family could become a weapon, how trust could be used to destroy. They drove home in silence. That night, lying in bed with her turned away from him, he made a decision. If they already suspected him of being careful, he might as well be thorough about it. He started documenting everything. Every conversation with Kellen got noted with date and time. Every financial discussion with Avery went into a password-protected file. Every document related to his business, every contract, every bank statement, all organized, all backed up, all undeniably separate from their marriage. He wasn't planning to leave, but he was planning to survive whatever came next. January brought the first real confrontation. He came home early one afternoon to find Avery in his home office, his laptop open, his business files displayed on the screen. "What are you doing?" he asked from the doorway, keeping his voice level. Avery jumped, guilt flashing across her face before morphing into defiance. "I needed to see." "See what?" "What you're hiding." "I'm not hiding anything. Those files are private because they're business documents." "Private from your wife?" "Private from everyone who isn't part of the business." He crossed the room, closed the laptop. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I found a lot of money you never mentioned." "That money is in business accounts. It's not personal savings. It's still money. Money that's earmarked for operations, payroll, taxes, supplies. It's not liquid. It's not some secret fortune." Avery stood, arms crossed. "My parents think you've been hiding assets." "Your parents," he repeated. "Not you. Them. They're trying to protect me." "From what?" "From being married to someone who runs his business responsibly. From being left with nothing if you decide to walk away." There it was. The real fear, planted and watered and grown until it choked out everything else. "I'm not walking away," he said. "But you're pushing me there with this. How dare you?" "No." His voice cut through her rising anger, sharp and final. "How dare you let your parents dictate our marriage? How dare you sneak through my private files because they told you to doubt me? I've done nothing wrong except refuse to be controlled. Nobody's trying to control you. Then what do you call this? What do you call showing up to interrogate me about money that's none of their business? What do you call demanding I merge everything so they can have oversight?" Avery's face flushed. "They just want to help. They want access. There's a difference." She left the room without another word. He heard the front door slam, her car start, gravel crunching under tires. He sat in his office chair and stared at the closed laptop, at the life he'd carefully built, at the walls he'd maintained not out of distrust, but out of survival instinct. His phone buzzed an hour later. A text from Avery, "Staying at my parents' tonight." He didn't respond. What was there to say? 3 days later, Avery returned. They moved around each other like strangers sharing space, polite and distant. The warmth that had once defined their marriage had frozen into something brittle. "We should talk about this," Avery said one evening. "About what?" "About how your family has convinced you I'm the enemy. About how you violated my privacy. Which part would you like to discuss?" "You're being unfair." "I'm being honest. If that feels unfair, maybe you should examine why." "I just want transparency." "You want control, like your parents. You want to know everything so you can manage me, shape me into whatever version fits their expectations." That's not true. But it was true, and they both knew it. The relationship had changed. Whatever foundation they'd started with had been undermined by constant outside pressure, by whispered doubts, by the slow erosion of trust that happened when too many people had opinions about something that should have been private. February came and went. March arrived with false spring warmth. The distance between them grew from feet to miles, from awkward silence to barely speaking. They lived like roommates who'd signed a bad lease, stuck together, counting days, avoiding confrontation. The family dinners continued, though he attended less frequently. When he did go, the atmosphere had changed. No more pretense of politeness. Kellen watched him with open assessment. Lynette's smiles had edges. Calvin made jokes that weren't really jokes. "When are you going to get a real job?" Calvin asked one Sunday. "I have a real job. I mean something with growth. Potential, not just hammering nails." "I don't hammer nails. I supply materials." "Same thing." Calvin grinned. "Blue-collar work." "Calvin," Avery said weakly, but she didn't defend him. Never defended him. Kellen leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "The boy has a point. You're limiting yourself. Limiting Avery by extension." "Avery has her own career," he said. "Part-time design work." Lynette's voice carried disappointment. "She could do so much more if she had the financial freedom." "She has financial freedom. We both do." "That's not what she tells us," Kellen said. And there it was. The real betrayal. Not that Avery's family had opinions, but that Avery had been feeding them information, giving them ammunition, painting a picture that justified their interference. He looked at Avery. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "I think we're done here," he said, standing. "Sit down," Kellen commanded. "No." The word dropped into silence. Nobody told Kellen Brooks no. Certainly not in his own house, at his own table, surrounded by his family. "Excuse me." Kellen's voice went dangerously quiet. "I said no. I'm not sitting down. I'm not listening to this anymore. And I'm not coming back." He walked out. Avery didn't follow. He drove home alone, parked in their driveway, went inside to their empty house that had never really felt like theirs, always his, never quite ours. She came home 3 hours later. He was sitting in the living room, the lights off, watching shadows move across the ceiling. "We need to talk," Avery said from the doorway. "Now you want to talk?" "My parents think we should try a separation." Of course they did. Not counseling, not therapy, just straight to separation. They think it would give us space to figure things out. They think it would give you leverage in a divorce. Avery flinched. That's exactly what this is. Your father is a real estate investor. He knows how these things work. Separate first, establish independence, then file. Makes the division easier. You're paranoid. I'm informed. There's a difference. So what do you want to do? Avery asked, and her voice held exhaustion, defeat, the sound of someone who'd already decided but was waiting for permission. "What do you want to do?" he countered. She looked at him finally, really looked at him, and he saw the answer in her eyes before she spoke it. "I think a separation might be good," she whispered. He nodded slowly, not because he agreed, not because he wanted it, but because fighting against the inevitable was just another form of losing, and he'd learned long ago that some battles couldn't be won. "Fine," he said. "I'll move out. You don't have to." "Yes, I do. This is your family's house. Always has been. They bought the down payment. They chose the location. They've been making decisions about it since before we moved in. So I'll leave. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. He moved out 2 weeks later. Found a small rental near Horsetooth Reservoir. 1 bedroom, barely furnished, cheap enough that he could keep saving while paying 2 rents. He took only what was his clothes, a few books, his laptop, a mattress he threw on the floor like he was 22 again, starting for nothing. The first night alone, he sat on that mattress and looked around the empty room. No pictures on the walls. No shared memories cluttering the space. Just blank walls and clean surfaces and the kind of quiet that could either break you or make you stronger. He chose stronger. The separation lasted 6 weeks before the divorce papers arrived. They came via registered mail, delivered on a Tuesday afternoon while he was reviewing supply contracts. The manila envelope sat on his makeshift desk, a folding table from Target, like an expected visitor he'd been preparing for. He opened them carefully, reading every line twice. Avery had filed in Larimer County. Her attorney was listed as Jessica Thornton from Thornton & Associates, a firm known for aggressive family law representation. The filing demanded equitable distribution of all marital assets, including his business. His business. The one thing that had nothing to do with their marriage. The thing he'd built years before he'd even met Avery. They were coming for it anyway. He called his own attorney the next morning. Robert Hayes had handled the business incorporation, managed contracts, dealt with boring paperwork that kept operations legal and clean. He was 63, balding, methodical, and entirely unimpressed by drama. They're claiming entitlement to your business? Hayes asked after reviewing the documents. Half of it. Based on what grounds? That it increased in value during our marriage. That marital funds might have supported it. That I'm hiding assets. Hayes made a humming sound. Are you hiding assets? No. Keeping accurate records? Yes. Good. Bring me everything. Bank statements, business accounts, tax returns, contracts, receipts. Everything from 2 years before your marriage to now. I have all of that. Of course you do. Hayes actually smiled. I've seen your record keeping. You might be the most organized client I've ever had. Unfortunately for you, that makes you look suspicious to suspicious people. So what do? We let the process work. Discovery goes both ways. They'll demand your records. We'll provide them. Every single one. So clean and organized that there's nothing to hide behind. And then we'll see what they actually have. The discovery process began 3 weeks later. Avery's attorney sent a list of demands 17 pages long. They wanted 5 years of tax returns, complete business records, personal bank statements, credit card reports, property titles, and records of every major purchase made during the marriage. He provided all of it, organized by date, cross-referenced, annotated where necessary. Hayes delivered 6 boxes of documents to Thornton & Associates with a cover letter noting that this represented full disclosure. During this time, he avoided most social situations. He worked long hours at the supply company, managing orders, negotiating with contractors, keeping his business running exactly as it always had. The work was grounding. Numbers made sense. Contracts had clear terms. There was no ambiguity in a purchase order, no hidden meaning in an invoice. One evening in May, his phone rang. Avery's name appeared on the screen. He let go to voicemail. She called back immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, he answered. What? We need to talk. Her voice was tight, strained. Our attorneys can talk. Please. Can we meet somewhere? Against his better judgment, he agreed. They met at a coffee shop near campus, one they'd gone early in their relationship when everything felt simple. The irony wasn't lost on him. Avery looked different. Thinner, drawn, her eyes shadowed. She ordered tea she didn't drink and sat across from him with nervous hands that couldn't stay still. My attorney says you provided everything, she started. I did. She said it's all really organized. It is. She also said there's nothing there. No hidden accounts. No mixed assets. No. Avery's voice broke slightly. No evidence that you were planning this. Because I wasn't. My parents said you had to be hiding something. Your parents were wrong. Avery looked out the window at students passing by, young and carefree and not yet familiar with disappointment. They hired a forensic accountant, someone who specializes in finding hidden money. And he said the same thing. Your books are clean. Everything's separate. He said it's almost unusual how careful you've been. Unusual or smart? He didn't say smart. He said careful, like you've been preparing for this for years. I've been preparing for survival. That's different. Avery finally looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw something there he hadn't expected. Recognition, maybe even respect. My attorney is recommending we settle, she said quietly. I'm listening. She says there's no case for business division, that you clearly owned it before marriage and kept it completely separate. She says at best I might be entitled to some marital savings, but not much. How much is not much? Maybe 10,000, plus half the equity in the house. But since we only live there 18 months and barely pay down a mortgage. Avery trailed off. It's nothing like what my parents said I'd get. He sipped his coffee. It had gone cold, but he drank it anyway. So what do you want to do? I don't know. Avery's hands twisted around her untouched cup. They're so angry. My dad especially. He said you tricked me, that you must have done something illegal, that nobody's records are that clean unless they're hiding something, or unless they're just clean. He doesn't believe that. I don't care what he believes. He wants me to keep fighting. He says his attorney friends can tear apart your business records, find something your accountant missed. Let me be very clear, he said, leaning forward. I will provide anything requested by Discovery. I will comply with every legal demand. But if your father tries to drag this out, tries to weaponize the legal system, I will fight back. I will make it expensive. I will make it public. And I will win because I've done nothing wrong except refuse to be controlled by him. Avery looked like she might cry. Instead, she laughed, a short, bitter sound. You always were the stubborn one. I prefer principled. That too. She stood, leaving her tea untouched. I'll tell them I want to settle. I don't know if they'll listen. That's your choice to make. You're an adult, Avery. You always have been. You just let them forget it. She walked out without responding. He stayed, finishing his cold coffee, watching people live their uncomplicated lives outside the window. The mediation was scheduled for June 15th. It took place in a conference room at Hayes' office. Neutral ground, beige walls, a long table with uncomfortable chairs. Jessica Thornton arrived with Avery. But Avery wasn't alone. Lynette and Kellen came with her. Hayes raised an eyebrow. This is attorney-client mediation. Third parties typically aren't present. My clients requested family support, Thornton said smoothly. Interesting interpretation of support, Hayes muttered. They sat on opposite sides of the table. Him and Hayes on one side. Avery, Thornton, Lynette, and Kellen on the other. Like a negotiation between hostile nations. The mediator, a woman named Patricia Reeves, laid out the ground rules. Both parties would present their positions. She would help facilitate discussion. The goal was equitable resolution. Thornton started. My client entered this marriage in good faith. She contributed emotionally and financially to the household. During the marriage, her husband's business saw significant growth. As marital property, she's entitled to compensation for that growth. Hayes responded, my client's business existed before the marriage. It was never marital property. Tax returns show consistent growth over 5 years, predating the marriage by 3 years. The growth pattern is identical before and during the marriage, proving no marital contribution to business success. My client supported the household, Thornton countered, allowing her husband to focus on business. My client provided equally to household expenses, Hayes said. Bank records show split contributions. No financial dependency either direction. This went on for 30 minutes. Numbers, dates, legal precedents. Patricia Reeves took notes, occasionally asking clarify questions. Lynette kept whispering to Avery. Kellen stared at him with undisguised contempt. Finally, Patricia turned to Thornton. What settlement is your client seeking? Thornton looked at Avery, who glanced at her parents, who nodded. 40% of business equity, calculated at current market value, plus 50% of all marital savings, plus the house. The demand was aggressive, bordering on absurd. Hayes actually laughed. 40% of a business she never worked for, never invested in, and has no legal claim to? Let's be realistic. Let's review the financials, Patricia said. Hayes slid 3 folders across the table. One to Patricia, one to Thornton, one to Avery. He'd seen these documents already. His entire financial life laid bare in neat columns and clear numbers. The room went quiet as they reviewed. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 15. He watched Avery's face as she read, saw the moment she understood. The business accounts showed exactly what he'd always said. Steady growth. Clear separation. No coming-led funds. No marital money flowing into business operations. No business money flowing out except his salary, which had remained consistent. The personal accounts showed modest savings. Joint account with $23,000. His personal account with $41,000. Clear records of how each account was funded. No secrets. No hidden offshore accounts or shell companies. The house equity was minimal. They put down 20%, paid the mortgage for 18 months. After realtor fees and remaining mortgage, maybe $15,000 in equity to split. Patricia looked up first. Ms. Thornton, I'm not seeing grounds for business division. The separation is clean. Assets are clearly delineated. Unless you have evidence of fraud or hidden assets. Thornton looked at Avery, who looked at her parents. Kellen leaned forward. He's hiding something. Nobody keeps records this clean. There has to be money somewhere else. Mr. Brooks, Patricia said firmly, you're not part of these negotiations. Please refrain from speaking. This is my daughter, my family. I have every right. You have no rights in this mediation. Patricia cut him off. If you cannot remain silent, you'll be asked to leave. Kellen's face reddened. Lynette touched his arm, whispered something. He sat back, jaw tight, anger radiating off him like heat. Thornton reviewed the documents again, then whispered with Avery for several minutes. When she looked up, he saw defeat in her eyes. We need to confer with our client, Thornton said. Request a recess. 30 minutes, Patricia agreed. They left the room. Hayes leaned back in his chair. They're going to settle. You're sure? There's nothing to fight about. The forensic accountant found nothing. We provided everything. Either they accept reality or we go to court, where a judge will tell them the same thing while costing them $50,000 in legal fees. Kellen won't want to accept it. Kellen doesn't have a choice. It's not his marriage. But Hayes didn't understand the Brooks family dynamics. It was never really Avery's marriage either. It was always theirs collective property they thought they could manage. When they returned, Avery looked drained. Lynette looked furious. Kellen looked like he wanted to overturn the table. Thornton looked professional, but her shoulders had slumped slightly. My client is willing to settle, Thornton said, with revised terms. They negotiated for another hour. In the end, Avery received half the joint savings, $11,000. Half the house equity, $7,000. No business stake. No spousal support. Less than $20,000 total. From a marriage that lasted just under 2 years. Patricia prepared the settlement agreement. They would sign pending final divorce decree. The marriage would be dissolved in 60 days. As they gathered their papers, Kellen stood abruptly. This isn't over, he said, pointing at him. You think you won, but you didn't. You just showed everyone exactly who you are. And who is that, he asked calmly. A manipulator. A user. Someone who prepared to destroy my daughter from day one. I prepared to protect myself. If that looks like destruction to you, maybe you should examine what you were planning. How dare you? Dad, stop. Avery said, her voice exhausted. Just stop. It's done. He stole years from you. He kept clean records. That's all he did. And you told me he was hiding money, and he wasn't. You told me to fight, and there's nothing to fight for. So maybe, her voice broke. Maybe you were wrong. The silence that followed was absolute. In Kellen Brooks's world, being told he was wrong by his daughter might have been a first. They left separately. Him and Hayes through the front entrance. Avery and her family through the side door. He didn't watch them go. There was nothing left to see. That evening, he sat in his small rental, eating takeout directly from the container, and felt the weight of 2 years lift. Not the good weight of love and partnership. The heavy weight of constant evaluation, endless justification, perpetual defense. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Calvin. You're a coward and a thief. Enjoy your empty life. He deleted it without responding, then blocked the number. Another text, this time from Avery. I'm sorry it ended like this. He stared at that message for a long time. Part of him wanted to respond, wanted to explain that she'd made choices that led here, wanted to list all the ways her family had poisoned their marriage. But anger was exhausting, and he was done being exhausted. He replied, "Me too." And he meant it. He was sorry. Sorry that she'd chosen their influence over their marriage. Sorry that she'd believed their paranoia over his consistency. Sorry that she'd lose more from this divorce than money. She'd lose the ability to blame him for everything that came next. The final divorce decree arrived in late July. He signed it at Hayes's office, handed it back, and walked out in the summer heat feeling lighter than he had in years. "What now?" Hayes asked as they stood in the parking lot. "Back to work. Back to normal. You got good business. Keep it clean. Keep it separate. You did everything right. Doesn't feel like right. Feels like necessary. Sometimes they're the same thing." He drove back to the reservoir, to his small rental that had become more of a home than the house ever was. He cracked a beer, sat on his back porch overlooking the water, and watched the sun set over mountains that had witnessed better men than him survive worse. The business kept growing. Small contracts became medium ones. Medium ones became large. He hired 2 more employees, rented a larger warehouse space, updated his equipment. The work was satisfying, simple problems with concrete solutions. But the Brooks family wasn't done with him yet. August brought rumors. Whispers through the small Fort Collins business community that his company had financial problems, that he'd mismanaged contracts, that clients were unhappy. Nothing specific, nothing provable, just vague insinuations that somehow spread through casual conversations. He traced them back eventually. Calvin had been talking to mutual acquaintances, planting seeds of doubt. Not enough to be actionable, just enough to create uncertainty. Kellen had been making calls to contractors, suggesting they might want to reconsider working with him. It was subtle warfare, death by 1,000 cuts. Most contractors ignored it. They'd worked with him for years, knew his reliability, trusted his word. But a few got nervous. One canceled a contract citing budget concerns. Another postponed a project indefinitely. He documented everything. Every rumor, every canceled contract, every strange hesitation from clients who'd been happy before. He didn't respond directly, didn't confront the Brooks family, just kept working, kept building, kept proving through actions what words couldn't accomplish. By October, something shifted. Kellen's real estate company started having problems, publicly visible problems. A development deal fell through. A commercial property sat empty longer than expected. Permit issues on a residential project created delays that cost thousands per day. He heard about it through the same gossip networks that had spread rumors about him. The difference was these weren't rumors. They were public record. Kellen had overextended, built his business on assumptions that didn't hold, on confidence that outpaced reality. The commercial real estate market in northern Colorado had softened. Properties weren't moving like they had been. Kellen's business model relied on quick turnover, leveraged investments, rolling profits into new deals. When the rolling stopped, everything else did too. He didn't celebrate Kellen's problems, didn't feel satisfaction or vindication. He felt nothing at all, which was perhaps the cruelest response possible. Avery called in November. He almost didn't answer. 5 months since the divorce, since they'd spoken beyond necessary logistics. But curiosity won. "Hello, it's me." Her voice was tentative, smaller than he remembered. "I know. Can we talk? We are talking. In person. Please. I need to explain some things." They met at a park near the reservoir, neutral ground where neither had memories. It was late afternoon, the light going golden and soft. Avery sat on a bench overlooking the water, wrapped in a jacket against the autumn chill. He sat beside her, but kept distance between them. Not hostile, just separate. "My parents are having financial problems," Avery said without preamble. "I heard. They lost a lot of money. Some bad investments, some bad timing. Dad's business is struggling. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" She looked at him, searching his face for something. "I'm not happy about it, but I'm not sad either. Their financial choices aren't my concern. They blamed you for a while. Said you must have interfered somehow, spread rumors, damaged their reputation. Did I? No. Calvin admitted he was the one spreading rumors about you. Dad told him to stop, but he did it anyway. And then their business problems started, and they realized the two things weren't connected at all. They just made bad decisions. The wind picked up, sending leaves skittering across the path. Avery pulled her jacket tighter. I wanted to apologize, she continued, for believing them, for not trusting you, for letting them convince me you were the problem when really, her voice caught, when really they were the problem all along. Okay, that's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say, Avery? That I forgive you? That we can try again? That everything's fine now that you've realized I was telling the truth? Maybe. Yes. I don't know. He watched a sailboat move slowly across the reservoir, white canvas bright against dark water. I warned you. Before the separation, before the divorce, I told you they were manipulating you. You chose to believe them instead. I know. You chose their fear over our marriage, their control over our partnership. You let them tear us apart because it was easier than standing up to them. I know. Tears now, sliding down her cheeks. I know I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I believe you're sorry. I believe you see it now. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't rebuild what was broken. We could try. No. The word was gentle, but absolute. We couldn't, because this would happen again. The next time your family decides they know better, the next time they plant doubt, you believe them. That's who you are with them. And I can't live like that. I've changed. Have you? Have you told them no? Set boundaries? Refuse their advice on your personal life? Avery looked away. The answer was in her silence. I didn't think so, he said. You're still living in their shadow, still letting them define your choices. The only difference is now you see the shadow for what it is. That's not fair. It's completely fair. I'm not angry with you, Avery. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. And without trust, there's nothing to build on. She cried harder then, the kind of crying that comes from recognizing a truth you can't change. He sat beside her, not comforting but not cruel, just present until the tears slowed. What do I do now? She asked finally. Whatever you want. That's the freedom you have now. No husband to blame. No marriage to hide behind. Just you and your choices. I miss you. You miss the idea of me. The version where I'm not a person with boundaries, where I'm willing to be controlled, where I fit into the shape your family wanted. You never really knew me, Avery. You just knew the parts one showed you while trying to keep the peace. That's harsh. That's honest. They sat in silence as the sun dropped below the mountains, turning the sky orange and purple and eventually dark. When Avery finally stood to leave, she looked at him one last time. I hope you find someone who deserves you, she said. I hope you find yourself first. Without them. She walked away, shoulders hunched against the cold. He stayed on the bench until full dark, until the park lights flickered on, until the night settled into the kind of quiet that feels earned. The months that followed were unremarkable in the best possible way. His business continued growing. He moved into a better apartment, bought new furniture, created a space that felt deliberately chosen rather than desperately acquired. He dated occasionally, nothing serious, just reminders that connection was possible without control. He saw members of the Brooks family around town sometimes. Fort Collins wasn't big enough for complete avoidance. Lynette in the grocery store once, pretending not to see him. Calvin at a gas station, suddenly very interested in his phone. Kellen from a distance at a restaurant, older-looking, diminished. They never spoke. What would they say? They'd gambled on destroying him and lost. Their manipulation had backfired. Their control had evaporated. He'd survived by simply being exactly who he'd always been. One evening in February, almost a year after the divorce, he sat in his office reviewing quarterly projections. The numbers were good. Better than good. The business had its best year ever. Not because of revenge or spite, just because of consistent effort and clean operation. His phone rang. Unknown number. He debated ignoring it, then answered. This is Detective Williams with Fort Collins Police. Am I speaking with? She said his name. Yes. I'm calling about Calvin Brooks. Are you familiar with this individual? His stomach tightened. He's my ex-wife's brother. What's this about? Mr. Brooks has been arrested for harassment and stalking. During processing, we found evidence suggesting he'd been engaging in a targeted campaign against your business. False reviews, fake complaints to licensing boards, attempts to interfere with contracts. Were you aware of this? I suspected. I never had proof. We have proof now. Part of a larger pattern of behavior against multiple individuals. I'll need you to come in and provide a statement. Would tomorrow work? Yes. He hung up slowly. Calvin. Not Kellen. Not Lynette, but Calvin, the younger brother, the one everyone dismissed as just joking around, just being Calvin. The most damage had come from the one nobody took seriously. He provided his statement the next day, showed the detective his documentation, every canceled contract, every strange rumor, every business interaction that had felt wrong. She took notes, made copies, thanked him for his thoroughness. Will you press charges? She asked. What are my options? Business interference, libel, harassment. Depending on damages, possibly fraud. He was filing false complaints using fake identities. That's a felony. What's he looking at? With his record, this isn't his first offense. Probably jail time. Minimum 6 months, maybe 2 years. He thought about it. About revenge, about justice, about the difference between the two. About the kid who'd made jokes at his expense, who'd grown into a man who couldn't stop trying to hurt people. I'll press charges, he said. Not for revenge. Because he needs to stop. If not with me, he'll do this to someone else. That's a responsible choice. Just a necessary one. Calvin pleaded guilty eventually. Got 18 months, reduced to 8 with good behavior. Kellen had to sell his office building to pay legal fees and restitution. Lynette stopped appearing at social events. Her public image of the perfect family finally cracked beyond repair. Avery sent him one final text. I heard about Calvin. I'm sorry for everything he did. Everything we all did. You deserve better. He read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because some conversations are finished even when words remain. Spring came back to Colorado, as it always does. The mountains shed their snow. The reservoir filled with meltwater. Trees remembered how to be green. Life continued its cycle of growth and retreat, damage and repair, ending and beginning. He stood on the back deck of his apartment one evening in April, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of rose and gold. The business was thriving. His life was quiet, ordered, his own. The Brooks family had faded into background noise. People who once mattered becoming people who just existed in the same town. A neighbor waved from across the parking lot. He waved back. A small interaction, meaningless and perfect in its simplicity. Someone once told him that the best revenge was living well. He'd never believed that. Living well wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was healing. It was the stubborn insistence on building something good from the wreckage others left behind. The Brooks family had tried to break him, tried to control him, tried to reshape him into something manageable and small. They'd failed not because he fought them, but because he'd simply refused to become what they needed him to be. He'd stayed himself, kept boundaries, maintained discipline, protected what mattered. And in the end, that was enough. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just enough. The sun dropped below the horizon. Darkness spread across the valley. He went inside, locked the door, and lived his quiet, chosen life, the kind of peace that looks like nothing from the outside but feels like everything from within.